Okay, guys. Well, first of all, thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. We know these are incredibly challenging times, and we just appreciate the time that you're going to be spending with us. We hope to add lots and lots of value and information that will help you not only through this time, but beyond. So we've modified the presentation a bit, and we've now entitled Lead Through the Curve, Broaden Your Impact, Branding, and Growth. And this is part of a 3-part masterclass series that Lucas came up with that I thought was fantastic, because the things that he's been able to do in our practice has been truly remarkable. And we felt like it was really important for us to share with the rest of the chiropractic community in order to help them brand and grow their practices as well. I think, we definitely want to start with the elephant in the room. We know what's going on out there in the universe, and it's disruptive, to say the least. And I typically love the word disruption, but in this day and age, this kind of disruption is not really good for anybody. We've been having multiple meetings internally with our own organization, our own company, our own teammates about how we manage and lead through this crisis. And so through this, we've kind of assembled our playbook, and a playbook that we think is relevant to other healthcare providers that are out there that are trying to manage all of this information and all this content and all the things that are changing on like what seems like an hourly basis. So I just want to talk to you about what I call the 5 Ps of this playbook. And this is extremely high level. I mean, the amount of detail that I could go into on just one of these components would take an hour in and of itself. But I just want to plant the seed and want to get you guys starting to think about how you're managing the situation. What are the areas of opportunity for you, and how you can improve your capabilities through this challenging time. So first of all, I just want to let you guys know of a website. It's called coronavirus.app. There's real-time information, or as real-time as it could be, on really the number of outbreaks, the number of fatalities, the number of those that are currently infected and those that are, recovered. There you can see the world map. You can click on any country. This is the US just a few hours ago. And we can see, obviously, that just based on even a week ago, these numbers just continue to rise. We know what's happening in our country and around the world today. The first thing that I think about as it relates to our practice and the people on the team is, what kind of a leader am I going to be? If there's ever a time for me to rise to the occasion and be the best human being I can be, leader I can be, friend I can be, now is definitely the time. This was a really good article put out by Forbes called The 5 Top Leadership Challenges During the Coronavirus Pandemic. I really liked it. But when it came down to the things that I thought were most important for leadership in a crisis, these are really some of the things that rang true for me. And the first part is have a plan. And we're going to talk in greater detail about that for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the webinar today. And then I'm going to turn it over to Lucas and let him get to his branding and growth magic. But the first thing is really to have a plan. It is incredibly easy, and I've caught myself doing this, to become reactive, because there's so much information that's coming out all at the same time, and some of it is conflicting information that it can be really challenging. And so, yes, we have to be reactive. We have to be aware of the information that's coming out and react to it accordingly. And at the same time, we've got to set some quiet time aside to really devise a plan. And we'll talk about how we do that in the plan that we've put together for our practice and things that we can share with you guys just to make them available. The second element is not always the easiest, but it's about transparency. I literally about 10 minutes ago sent out the final version of our policy, and one of the leaders on our leadership team, just sent me a really nice email back and said, I know this is difficult, and one thing that I appreciate about you is the fact that you're always really direct and transparent. And I think the more direct and transparent we can be as leaders, the better the situation will create. Because if you're ambiguous, and if there's ambiguity, you're ambiguous, you're not clear, then there's a lot of confusion, and confusion creates stress and anxiety and doesn't lend to success. So, think about your plan, and then once you have your plan, be really clear and transparent about it, and don't cushion it. I mean, you want to be empathetic for sure, but just say what it is, because people just want to hear the truth. The third thing is you know, tune into the right channels. There is so much noise out there right now. You know, for me, for actually health-related issues specifically tied to the virus, I'm going to the CDC and I'm going to the World Health Organization. And I'm not really listening to anything else because from my perspective, those are the organizations that carry the most weight and carry the most credit. There could be other organizations out there that are highly credible as well. I'm just telling you from my perspective, those are the organizations that I'm listening to, that I'm paying attention to, and that I'm applying my policies and my activities towards. Number 4 is communicating, you know, frequently. I've often used the term in the last several weeks of over-communicating. You want to be communicating internally, certainly a ton to your existing team, and then of course externally to your patients as well. There's huge opportunities for you to be communicating externally. We'll talk a little bit about that with my slides, and I know Lucas will share some information as well. And by the way, externally doesn't tie just to your patients. Think about your referral sources. Think about other healthcare providers right now that are on the front lines that are dealing with this issue. And they may have somebody coming into their practice who's got severe low back pain. They're not thinking about, you know, that patient or, you know, going to the chiropractor and making that referral. They don't even know if you're open. So the opportunity for you to communicate externally to other healthcare providers, I think, is a really great opportunity, and it keeps people out of healthcare facilities and resources that are otherwise needed for much more severe conditions like COVID-19. When you're communicating frequently internally and even externally, I'm a big believer in asking for feedback. I've been asking for feedback from my doctors today, other members of my team, things about the ethics of staying open, things about what looks right as it relates to patient care delivery. You know, any and all feedback that I can garner at this time, I want to garner. I want to collect the best available information that I can get from people on, at least internally, on the front lines of this issue, taking care of patients, and we are open. We are taking care of patients. I want to get their feedback so that I can make the best decisions possible. Sometimes leaders tend to think they need to have all the answers, and I'm not of that opinion at all. In fact, you know, I'm a big believer in hiring people that are a lot smarter than me, and then asking for their feedback and their opinion so that we can collectively make the best decisions. Another way to approach this in maybe your next staff discussion or your next staff meeting is something called question storming. And question storming is really simple. You get out a piece of paper, you can do it virtually, and all you do is start every single question with, how might we? You don't answer any of the questions, you don't solve any of the questions right away, you just try and ask as many questions as you possibly can, especially questions that you've never asked before, and I have to believe that in this crisis, there's going to be a lot of those. But once you've asked all those questions and they're listed out, pick the top 2 or 3 that you think are the most relevant to answer, because the best answers come from the best questions. So question storming is a really, really great activity. So now let's go more specifically into the plan. And I said this was high level, this previous slide. We're only getting into number 1, like 2 through 5. There's a lot more to discuss, but we just don't have the time today. But I want to talk about the plan. So what's the playbook here? It always starts with you. If you're not taking care of yourself, you know, it's going to be impossible for you to take care of others. So some resources that we're making available for you guys on our website, which is kaizenovate.com. You'll see that in just a second. But resources that I love for personal well-being, I use on my phone what's called the 5-Minute Journal app. Every morning I'm journaling, and it's great. And actually, it doesn't really take 5 minutes. It probably takes closer to 2.5 or 3. But it's a great app. I love it. People like Tim Ferriss use it. It's just a great app, and it's a great way to really create some quiet time, some really good thinking, some great affirmation opportunities during a time when it's really, really challenging. Get your day started the right way. Exercising for 30 minutes, you know, every single day is really important. Again, there's going to be resources on our website for you. There's something called True Coach, which is an app. We're opening that app up literally to the universe. All you have to do is pay $1, and you can get online coaching that's on your phone from one of our personal trainers. And this is not a sales pitch. I mean, we're not trying to sell you anything, but we're just giving that to you as an opportunity. It's $1. Obviously, we charge our clients a lot more than that, but for you, we'd be charging $1. So feel free to use it if that would be beneficial for you. Personal budget, you need to be thinking about your personal budget as well as your business budget. I think Understanding what your expenses are at home is equally as important as understanding what your budget is and what your expenses are in the office. So take some time to think about that and understand what are truly important expenses and what are expenses that you could alleviate that would help create less of a burden for you moving forward, assuming this goes a lot longer than we expect. And then lastly, our Director of Research and Innovation, some of you may know her, Jenna, she found out that Headspace, which is a meditation app, is free to all healthcare providers. So all you have to do is go to that link that's on this site. And by the way, you guys will have copies of this webinar. It will be on our website. And we'll also make sure that we'll blast it out by email. We'll blast you guys out the link. But if you put in your NPI number, you will get this meditation app for free. So those are some things that you can be doing for personal well-being. The next P, there's 5 P's to this. The first one is personal. The next one is personnel. We strongly believe that every practice out there needs to have a policy on this. If you don't have HR or if you don't have employee policies and procedures, that's probably something that you need to do. Employee policy and procedure manuals are really, really important. At a later date, our organization can help you with that. We can point you in the right direction. But for right now, especially if you're having staffing challenges and you might need to be giving people temporary layoffs or laying people off permanently, you really want to have a policy. This policy can address things like CDC guidance around sanitation, hygiene, safety, things around an altered compensation plan for members of your team. We've done that internally. My entire leadership team has essentially said, we're willing to do what it takes in order to make the company thrive and survive in the future. I liken this to a salary cap hit. You know, when a team is going over the salary cap, there's a certain budget that, you know, players can't go over, but if everybody can be under the salary cap, then everybody gets to stay on the team. And that's really, at least internally, the goal for us. But having something in your policy around a compensation strategy for this particular period of time is going to be extremely important for you. And then lastly, if you are going to be doing layoffs, having content in the policy around that for everybody in your team. Again, transparency, clarity, honesty, directness, all critically important in really creating the kind of culture that you want to have, especially during challenging times. Also, we have resources, for instance, in ours, we've got practices in Maryland and Virginia. So we've got all the unemployment resources that are listed for those states in the policy so people know where to turn if they have additional questions, because quite frankly, we're not unemployment experts and we don't pretend to be. So having that in the policy is really important. So what I've done is I've actually taken our policy and I've genericized it. I don't even know if that's a word, but I've made it generic. And so it is on our website. Once the webinar is over, you can go to kaizenovate.com. Again, you'll have these links. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. And then just go to the site. It's free. Just click on the link, download it. You'll have to modify it for your particular state, your particular practice, modify it based on maybe your existing employee policy and procedures manuals. But at least it's a template that you can start with. It'll save you time. It'll save you money for sure. And it's, you know, something that I just want to do for you guys because it's been helpful for us and I want you all to have it. The next P is patients. Like, how are we connecting with patients? And what's really cool is, like, we've had telehealth as part of our practice for a very long time, not using it nearly as much as we are today, but we've had it for a long time. And what I'm seeing, you know, in the various, you know, Facebook groups that I'm a part of, or the listserv in Virginia or Maryland, people are talking about telehealth, which is great. Even on our Health Tech Tribe Facebook page, if you're not on that and you're into tech, join it, Health Tech Tribe on Facebook, talking about the ways that we can use telehealth to engage with our patients. So one way to do it is telehealth. Another way to do it is that there's exercise programs that are available out there that are web-based where you can engage with your patients. These are ways to stay connected through virtual care delivery. Through our strategic partnership connections, if you use these codes here, ExamMed is one telehealth platform. You don't need to use it. There's plenty out there, but they are HIPAA compliant. They've loosened the regulations on HIPAA, but for us, we're still using it. But if you want to use it for 30 days for free, you just use the code Kaizen 2020. You just use that link. Same thing with web exercises. They're one of our strategic partners. You can use that link. If you use Kaizen free as the code, again, you'll get 30 days for free. Also, what we're making available to you, we do this for our app customers. We charge our app customers. But for those of you that are either not an app customer or just are on the webinar today, we have a library of exercises, video exercises that your patients can use. We've got over 150 of them. And so if that's of interest to you and that will help you stay connected to your patients, you can reach out to customer support at kaizenovate.com, and we will literally give you access to that entire library at no charge. We need to be able to sustain and be successful together, and just another way that we can support the chiropractic community, the profession, and the patients that we serve. So again, just reach out to customer support if that would be helpful. Other ways to stay connected, again, Lucas talked about this on the previous webinar, so go back and watch it if you haven't done that yet, but all the social media posting, you can do live events, you can post helpful exercises, even evidence-based content around immune boosting. Now, I'm gonna, full disclosure, full transparency, I'll just talk about it, I live it. I sent out some links to my own company about 2 studies that evaluated chiropractic's impact on the immune response. It was an in vivo study, interesting stuff. Use the conclusions to communicate with, the actual conclusions, written conclusions in the studies to communicate with my team. But in hearing a great interview by Dr. Katie Pullman and Dr. Bill Morgan, both at Parker, it became really clear that we have to be very, very careful in the ways that we communicate with the public, because we don't want to misconstrue a basic science study and turn it into something that can be tied to clinical improvement or preventing the coronavirus or curing the coronavirus. Regulators are watching us right now. They're watching every single one of us. And the messaging that we send out is really important. So if you take a study and you extrapolate the results and turn it into something that it's not, you're not only going to get in trouble yourself, but you're going to put the entire chiropractic profession at risk. Don't do it. So I'm asking you, I'm pleading with you, I'm telling you, if you're going to put out content, and there's lots of great content to put out there. There's exercise content, there's nutritional content, there's mental health content. Use evidence-based information, because you don't want to get yourself and the profession into trouble. You can use email blasts. There's great text messaging services out there. There's Sked, there's Zingit, there's ReviewWave, lots of Demand Force, lots of different companies out there that can actually help you with your text messaging services. And then if you are a Canvas app customer, we do have enhancements. We can change your banners. We've got all kinds of communication enhancements that we can do for you. We've already got telehealth and the home exercise platform built in. And most of you know that have used your own app that we built for you. There's also an assessment piece. You want to advertise that to your patient base, because they might have friends that want to take the assessment that are in pain. Then they can get home exercises right on their phone that will help them. So for our app customers, just know there's lots of functionality. If you need anything, just reach out to John or Jenna, and they will take care of you. Okay, we're getting towards the end now. Providers is another really important way of staying connected. We've been calling, emailing, faxing all of our referral sources. First of all, they want to know if we're open or closed. We're following up on relevant patient cases. And also we're letting them know that we're offering telehealth classes, telehealth sessions, and online classes as well. And we've got a template on our website that you can keep track of every call that you make or that your staff makes. And again, that's downloadable. It's free for you. You can just go to the website and pick it up. And then lastly, the last P is practice. Understanding what loans are available, what financial support is available at the state level, at the national level through the SBA administration, Small Business Administration. Those are really important things. I'm applying for loans. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed. Cash is king, and we want to ensure that we've got financial security and sustainability moving forward. We don't know what the coming weeks or months will look like. So make sure that you actually check out these sites, apply for as many loans as you can, assuming that you're interested, and at least know that you have access to the capital if you need it. I have one of my buddies raising his hand. I'm going to ask that we just hold off on the questions right now, because I don't know exactly how to work the Zoom yet, but I promise you we'll get to all the questions at the end. So again, leadership in a crisis, have a plan, be transparent, remain tuned into the right channels, communicate frequently, internally and externally, and encourage feedback, ideation, and do some question storing with your team. So now I want to turn it over to Lucas, and Lucas, you're going to be able to share your screen, correct?
Let me know when you can see it.
So make sure, yep, we can see it and we can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. J. And again, guys, all that information is going to be sent out to you afterwards, and most of it lives on our website permanently, so you have access to all those resources. And we'll talk about some other resources during this little piece of the presentation as well. And everything that we talk about here is free and it's downloadable for you guys as well. So let's go ahead and
Hey,
get
Lucas,
started.
one housekeeping. I'm really sorry. If you guys have a question, because I saw, Kevin, I know that you raised your hand, so I couldn't like figure out how to get to it, but if you just put it in the chat function, I promise to answer all your questions at the end.
Yeah. And even as we go through this branding exercise and kind of discussion, even if you have questions that don't pertain to the slide specifically, just feel free to put them there. It kind of opens up the floor for debate and discussion and all that. So, all right, so let's talk about branding real quick. I'll try to condense this a little bit so that we stay within the 1 hour time frame. Again, last time we talked about growth in general. We talked about digital marketing, patient engagement, community engagement. And I highly recommend that you guys go back and watch that video. Now, associated with this particular masterclass, we created a branding guide worksheet. I saw there were quite a few late signups for the webinar itself. So even though we'll talk a little bit about it here today, I highly encourage you guys to go and take some time to actually work through it, and if possible, work through it with your staff. As Dr. J says, there's no better time to work on the business than now that you're not working in the business as much as you were before. So when we say brands, right, we talk about branding. The first, I'm sure you guys can think of a bunch of brands that come to mind. One that always comes to mind for me is, and I'm sure just looking at this picture, you know exactly what brand this is, and you know it's a Harley Davidson. And the one thing that always stands out to me when thinking about brands is that Harley Davidson actually generates more revenue from merchandise sales than from motorcycle sales. So there's more people actually buying their stuff to associate themselves with that brand than actually buying the product that they set off to create in the first place. Now, another really interesting and really powerful brand that most of us don't even think about is this one. You can go anywhere in the world and you'll probably see some guy wearing a t-shirt that says NASA on it, right? Like, I mean, I'm from Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil, and I know exactly what this logo is, what it entails, the ideas behind it, the values of it, the glory that comes with it, all of that. And this is a government entity, right? Like you don't see this for like HHS or something like that. So again, great job by NASA. Now, when it comes to healthcare, most practices don't even think about a brand because it's not really something that they do when they're starting their business, right? They get either their doctor of chiropractic or their MD or their DO or whatever, and then they start practicing. But they never stop to think about what is my brand, what is my practice's brand, typically until several years into their business when they realize, oh, I got to differentiate myself somehow. So what are some of the winners of the branding discussion in healthcare? The first foremost that I think would be the Mayo Clinic. If you mention the Mayo Clinic to anyone, they know exactly what the Mayo Clinic is, what the Mayo Clinic does, why it exists. Now, the Mayo Clinic is a physical entity in Minnesota, right? But it's still, the ideas far supersede just their physical location. And another one is obviously Johns Hopkins. Now, we're from Maryland, and Johns Hopkins, we're here in Baltimore. But anywhere in the world, you mentioned the words Johns Hopkins, and people know exactly what that means. They know it's associated with the highest level of clinical care. So as consumers in general, whatever you're buying, we're always going to do business with brands that we know, trust, and like, whether that's your grocery store or as we move to this healthcare as retail mentality that our patients are having more and more. This applies also to healthcare practitioners. The important thing, and this is something that I just wrote down here because this is really where we start all of our branding discussions based on, is that really when it comes to healthcare decisions, people tend to lean on trust and relationships rather than aggressive marketing or shiny deals and any other kind of appealing marketing strategy. People are really buying the security that comes with doing business with you. And especially for us in the realm of chiropractic, there's a lot of stigma to this day around our profession. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of ignorance. And you see some very strong brands that are able to elevate themselves past that because they convey this sense of security to their audience. So let's look at this chart here. Obviously the chart's from 2018. I actually was not able to find one for 2019 yet, but I'm sure the numbers haven't changed too much. So if you look, these are the most effective digital marketing tactics based on the return on investment. So if you look at the top two, social media marketing and content marketing. So for those of you who don't know, content marketing is essentially organic growth just based on your content creation. It's actually the foundation of the marketing that we do here at Kaizo Health, and how we were able to grow our practice and boost our online new patient acquisition 300%, or all of that. It's organic, it's content that speaks directly to your audience. Now, let me ask you guys this. How many of you spend thousands of dollars in this bottom part here, which is what the marketing consultants are selling you, right? They're selling you SEO, email marketing, social media ads, and data management in terms of Google Analytics and all of that. But at the end of the day, don't forget that the top two are really the ones that are driving your results, and they're actually organic and don't cost a dime. So most people think, okay, strong brands are big marketing budgets, right? Like Budweiser or Dodge or whatever other brands you see on Super Bowl ads. But really, we would love to challenge that notion and have you think that a strong brand actually is much more powerful than a big marketing budget. In fact, if you have a weak brand, a big marketing budget is only harming your brand, because your message is not concise and people are being more frequently exposed to your brand without having any way to connect with it or do business with you. So in chiropractic, what we've boiled down is that there's really three factors that make a strong brand in chiropractic. And the first one is obviously highlighting points of differentiation. Now, there's a lot of commonalities between all of us chiropractors, right? I mean, we treat very similarly. A lot of times we're seeing the same conditions over and over again. So, and again, the branding guide really helps you work through all of this. But just to keep it kind of high level now, and then we'll dive into this a little bit more, highlighting your points of differentiation is definitely the number one factor in having a strong brand. What makes you unique? Then building real connections with your community, but most importantly, having ways to build these connections. And in today's age where we pretty much, it's like the Matrix, we all live in this digital realm where we're interacting with brands, or we're interacting with friends, and we actually have an online persona, like all our Facebook pages, Instagram pages, etc. It's important to have a clear avenue to connect with your audience, two audiences, right? Your current patients, but also your prospects, your target patients that you want to actually come into your practice and keep your practice growing. And then the third is probably what you hear a lot, is just keep messaging consistent across all platforms, which sounds great, but 99% of the time, you're not given the actual tools and the actual roadmap to make sure that that happens. You don't know what to say, where to say it, when to say it. And we'll work through all of that here. Towards the end, I'm going to walk you guys through each audience and what kinds of messaging works best for each one of those, all the way from 75-year-old plus to the millennials and below, if you can say it like that. And again, obviously brands really boil down to your values, your traits, and your personalities, but these are very, very broad concepts. So let's kind of take a dive and explore these a little bit more. So the first question is, what makes your practice different? And this can be a tough question sometimes when you work in a practice that has 3 or 4 doctors, or it's you and an associate, or maybe you're the associate. And if you think about your practice as a whole, what makes my practice different? And again, there's an added challenge to this, because a lot of times we're thinking about this once we've already been working there, right? We're already ingrained in that practice. It's not like we're starting a business afresh and we sit down and we map out the brand. So there's an added challenge there that you have to actually find out what your brand is a lot of times, rather than just create a brand. So what we always tell people, and what the exercise that we had to do ourselves, because we went through a rebrand 2 years ago, and we actually grew through the rebrand, which was actually a big surprise to everyone that was not part of our team, because we actually fully believed that we would. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, what makes you different as a practitioner yourself? What makes you different? What makes you stand out? And that can be a very, very difficult question to answer. Simple enough, right? What makes you different? And this is a great quote that I actually came across a couple of days ago as I was preparing for this masterclass. And this is really, we created the branding guide months ago, or 2 months ago, whatever. And this quote actually exactly defines the branding guide, because the branding guide, first, well, let's walk through it right now. So the first unit, and I hope some of you had time to actually work through it. And again, if you didn't, please, please, please take time to do it, because you will learn more about you and your practice doing this than any consultant can possibly tell you. So save yourself the money and figure it out, and it's actually going to be fun and super productive. So this is the first part, right? We start with the easy stuff. Your practice name, your team size. We work with practices that are single provider all the way to multi-clinic chains, kind of like us. So that's also a determining factor in your brand and your brand messaging. And then one thing that we, one thing that we learn just from talking to our own doctors, we have 7 doctors full-time here, but also our clients, is a lot of times it goes back to that notion of you're being ingrained into an existing machine that may or may not have a brand of its own, but it's a practice that's already operational. And you just kind of do things, and you don't really stop to think about, what conditions do I like to treat? What modalities do I like to use? Because these are all the things that are really going to help you build your personal brand if you're part of a multi-provider group, or the things that will start shaping your brand if you're part of a smaller group, or if you're a solo practitioner in your practice. So it's very important to sit down and write those down. What are my favorite conditions to treat, right? Back pain. Okay, what kind of back pain? Neck pain. What kind of neck pain? Why? All that thought process is very enlightening, and something that we actually have a lot of fun doing here. And then in 10 words or less, complete the following sentence. My practice exists because, right? And this is where, and that's why we say 10 words or less. It has to be extremely concise, pretty much like a mission statement, right? So that's you. Now, the next part of this is your patients, those you currently serve, people who have already accepted you as the provider, as the authority in their musculoskeletal pain management, so to speak. So here, important for you to know what, not to know, but to highlight here so that it's front and center, your age range of the people that you're seeing. And you can select more, you can select all if you wanted, if you're seeing a broad range of people. But most of us tend to see people that are kind of in a certain age group. A lot of us are seeing that 40 to 60. Some of us specialize in sports, younger crowd, weekend warriors, whatever. And then this here, we're asking you, what are the top 3 conditions that you treat the most? Because again, the answers that you provided here, what are your favorite ones, may not necessarily align with the 3 that you see the most. And we see this in our practice as well. And it's something that we work with our doctors a lot in catering our marketing to their desires and the things that they enjoy doing at work. We all want to have caseloads that are interesting to us and that actually make us excited to come to work every day. And this is here under 8 visits. It's actually a drop down. So if you do the worksheet, you have different options of the average length of stay for a patient. And here you answer the same question, but from the perspective of your patients. So needless to say, guys, that we highly encourage that you get some feedback from your patients. Kind of goes back to Dr. J's point earlier of getting as much feedback as you can, get as much insight as you can. And back to Ellen DeGeneres' quote, that people see you in a way that you may not even see yourself. Now, the last and most important part of the worksheet, and sorry, I had to kind of zoom out to fit it all in here, is your community. And here you really have to put a lot of thought into this, because it'll be easy to just work through this in 2 minutes and call it a day. But the most important part is this middle section here. Which of these 3 words best describes the vision that you have for your practice? Excuse me. So obviously there's a list of words here. There are 19 of them, and you can select your own if yours is not listed here. But the most important thing is why, in 20 words or less. So my practice is edgy. Why edgy? What makes your practice edgy? I would say our practice is pretty edgy, and we work kind of hard at that. But that's part of our strategy. Yours may not be. Yours may be revenue driven, and you only work with a certain type of patient population that yields the best return on your time investment. So again, these are all the things that you really want to think hard about, and we limit it to 3. is just like in Dr. J's question storming, you have to address the top 3 things, because after that, it essentially gets diluted and you start to lose yourself and you start to kind of spread a little bit. Because at the end of the day, you can have a clear brand, but every brand is pretty fluid, right? You can still take care of other types of patients. You don't want to put yourself in the box. You just want to have a clear identity that people can relate to when they're doing business with you. And this is actually my favorite part. Just as important as it is knowing what you are, is knowing what you're not. So we ask that you get 3 things, words of ideas that your practice does not represent. So even using some of the words above, revenue driven. Some practices are not revenue driven. Some practices are a lot more philanthropic, or they're essentially based on caring for one part of the population and just making ends meet, and that's what they're focused on. So you have to understand what your practice is and what your practice is not, because your messaging essentially depends on that. So if you haven't done the worksheet, go ahead and do it. If you have any questions on it, as always, just email us. We'll help you work through it. It should, most people take about 1 to 2 hours to complete it with the help of their team. Again, these are kind of crazy days, so I don't know how much you have access to your team, but it could be a cool way to stay in touch as well, and to also stay in touch with your patients. Use this almost as kind of a survey. It's something we've had a lot of success with. So the most important thing when it comes to, so through the worksheet, you've probably at the end of it identified whether you've identified what your practice is, and that is what you want it to be in terms of branding, or you've identified what it is and it is not what you want it to be. So at least you now have a direction to start steering it towards something that's perfectly aligned with who you are as a practitioner. So considering that that part is done, and again, some of you may not have done that, this part will also still be very helpful. So how to do brand messaging per age range, what are their interests, what platforms are they on, right? You have to know your audience. You have to know who's going to connect with your practice's brand. So we'll start at the top, the population that's called the silent generation. Why are they the silent generation? Because they're not loud and interacting and sharing memes and all this stuff on Instagram like the vast majority of us are. But you still have to think about them. And I know a lot of us don't take Medicare patients, this and that. It's okay. Let's just talk about this real quick. Okay, so the silent generation, they're not likely to be on digital platforms. And the vast majority of the time, they're not really making their healthcare decisions themselves. It's typically the baby boomers who are their kids, and or the caregivers who are typically either Gen Xers or baby boomers as well. So let's talk about that next. Now, whether you're targeting the silent generation or the baby boomers, this strategy will apply. So this is a population that relies heavily on referrals and previous experiences. Now, we still see a lot of doctors, chiropractors, doctors, relying mostly on this, on offline marketing, because that's how business has been done for decades, right? You go to your doctor, he's gonna write you a referral to go see a specialist. A lot of times we're the specialist, sometimes they get sent to ortho, whatever. But at the end of the day, that's kind of how this generation, this age range is going about doing their business and going about consuming healthcare. But the important thing to understand here is they're also online, right? Like, I know my parents, my grandparents, they're all on Facebook. And at the end of the day, that's a big opportunity for us to get in front of them, because for the vast majority of content produced online is geared towards the younger crowd, the 40 and under crowd. And the way to communicate your brand with the baby boomers specifically is a little bit different. It's not necessarily about showing the flashy stuff that's in your clinic, or showing them an adjustment compilation or something. And actually in the first masterclass, we go through all the different types of content, and we actually have an entire masterclass dedicated to this later in the year. And you can see the whole syllabus on our registration page if you want. But we talked about different content creation and for different platforms, etc. When it comes to baby boomers, if that's your target audience, if that's the group that aligns with your brand the best, we definitely recommend a two-pronged method of communication. One is, of course, you need marketing collateral, referral pads, things like that, that your referral sources, your referral network will use to send you business. But at the same time, you can put yourself in a position of authority online by teaching and educating and providing educational content. So we're talking about blogs and kind of long format video demonstrations. Now, again, if you go back to the last masterclass, we talked a lot about different types of videos and what applies to each audience. So make sure you go back and check that out. But we'll talk a little bit about this moving on here as well. Going a little bit younger here, the Gen Xers, they start to shift a little bit more into the digital realm and a lot more likely to interact with your brand digitally. So their thing is really reputation, online reputation, easy access to their reputation. They're not as digitally savvy as the millennials who know to click on Facebook, Yelp to see the reviews, etc. But they will go on Google My Business. And again, we talk a lot about Google My Business in the first masterclass to see the reviews and to see the feedback. So what we talk about with our clients is to focus on consistently highlighting your patient's positive experiences. And again, think about your audience. You're talking about a Gen Xer, so you probably want a lot of other Gen Xers in their experiences, whether it's video testimony, and we talk about here, so testimonials, case studies, and even interviews. Something where a lot of time, and we talk about creating the perfect testimonial in the last master class, but a lot of times you see a testimonial as just the patient sitting there and then someone's just filming them talking. And that's terrible, right? No one wants to watch that. So what we always try to do is to actually interview them. So we would have, for instance, Dr. J sitting right next to one of our longtime patients, just talking, because you can really see the rapport between patient and provider that way. And that's something that the Gen Xers are really craving to consume from their healthcare provider. Again, it's about trust and it's about that sense of security. They want to know that other people trust you as well. So again, the last bullet point goes into that as well. Positive reviews, showcase your success stories. And another thing that a lot of providers don't think about is consider printing these for your office, right? Have like a wall of fame. It's actually the second section of our growth guide, and you can download that in the landing page too. Having a wall of fame where you have pictures of patients who are getting discharged who had great success stories and maybe a testimonial. So every practice is different. You can see what applies to you, but we definitely recommend doing something like that. Now down to the Gen Yers and the millennials. They may have a reduced clinical need to be seen, right? They're maybe not getting injured as often. They're not going to their doctors as often to get referrals. But this is a population that is highly influenced by their peers. But they also align themselves with missions, which is something that your brand has to very, very clearly communicate. So this is one of the areas we've had the most success with, was to really position our brand, right, our practice, in an elevated position, so that patients that are seeing us and are getting our communications are truly feeling like they're being elevated by coming to our practice. And the way we did this was really to focus on influence and status, letting patients really feel like it's a privilege to come see us. And that all was essentially woven in through our messaging and through our branding and content creation. So for instance, we leverage micro influencers, and actually some of you guys that were in the last webinar, that was part of your homework. So we'll be sending out an email to check in with you guys on that to see if you actually did it. But that was one of the most successful things we've ever done here, was to leverage micro influencers. We found people in the community that were more than willing to come here and experience what we do in exchange for promoting what we do. Quid pro quo, no money out of our pockets, no money out of their pockets. We're both benefiting, and it's great. And some of these have been some of the best relationships we've ever had. Our very first micro influencer is also the guy that designed our uniform shirts and ended up printing those at a fraction of the cost that we would have paid otherwise. So it's a great way to get involved with your community, start getting to know people. The right people, of course. You want to really hand select the people that are representing your practice in terms of micro influencers. So again, if you want to learn more about that, go back to the previous webinar, or just shoot us an email and we can talk about that. And lastly is to align your business with charities or other initiatives that really align with your brand. Now, for our practice, we have 3 of them. We have the Lucky Dog Rescue, which is an animal shelter. We have an NGO, or a nonprofit here in DC called Back on My Feet. Actually, I think there are in other cities too. They help homeless people get back on their feet, literally, by running and implementing healthy habits. And then we also work with the Patriot Project, which is helping veterans and all of that. So again, align your business. And I'll tell you, we have a lot of dog lovers, and we have a lot of people who love running, and a lot of former military people who align with those initiatives and want to do business with us because they know that we support something that is dear to their heart. So highly recommend that you guys dig into this, something that you're passionate about. If you know Dr. J, you know that all three of those things are very close to his heart. So it's not a marketing stunt or anything like that. And that's really the point about branding, guys. You're not creating something to showcase it out there. This is the true embodiment of your beliefs. That's what effective branding ultimately comes down to. Because to create a brand and to build a brand is not sustainable. But to find ways to effectively communicate your beliefs and your intrinsic motivators, that's sustainable, and that's actually highly scalable. So next steps, we like to give you guys 3 things to do. Like I mentioned, the homework from last time. The first one here would be to complete the branding guide if you haven't done it. Now, I know it should take a little bit of time. So take your time, do it. If you have any questions, or if you want to send it to us once it's complete for us to look at it and maybe bounce some ideas off of you, please feel free to do so. We love doing this stuff. We love working with you guys. So let us hear from you. Map out your communication channels as they pertain to different audiences. If this statement, map out your communication channels as they pertain to different audiences, does not make sense to you, go back and watch the previous webinar. We talk about making sure that your content is native to the platform it's on. And this is what this is about. Again, we walk through the different audiences and talk to you a little bit about how you should communicate with them, but it has to be done on the right platforms, right? Like millennials and Gen Yers versus the baby boomers. Some may be on Twitter, some on Instagram, some on Facebook, some email, snail mail, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that you're going back, you're checking in with, or checking on the last webinar, and then map that out, figure out exactly who you're serving, who you want to serve, how you're going to communicate with them, what channels, how often. Really map this out. Take time to build out this strategy. And then by the end of all of that, I really hope you guys have a very concise answer or a completion to the sentence of my practice exists because blank. What is the why behind your business? And to make money is not an answer, because that's why we all have jobs. So what else do you do? What larger mission do you have? Why do you exist, essentially? So I hope that clarifies a lot of things when it comes to branding. Our next masterclass will be on digital readiness on April 21st. We also have a worksheet for that one, so keep an eye out. And we'll more than happy to take any questions from you guys. I know branding can be a little bit of an abstract concept in healthcare, but believe me when I say that it is the only sustainable way to grow your business without breaking the bank with a big marketing budget. So with that being said, I'm gonna hand it off to Dr. J again, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Lucas. I really appreciate it. When it comes to engaging your staff and your team with some of these exercises, how important is that in your opinion, and how does that drive the best possible result for kind of creating the brand?
That is a great question. Super great question. I would say, keeping in mind what I talked about, that most of us are ingrained into these machines that may not have a brand or may have a brand, who knows? It's very important to work with your team on this, because first and foremost, you want to make sure that every member of your team believes in what you believe in thoroughly, right? From beginning to end. And the way to talk about this is have them look at this questionnaire. Do your answers match up? Do you guys like seeing the same kind of conditions? Do you like the same kind of treatment modalities? And again, it's okay to be complimentary too. Like, you don't have to be a perfect match everywhere, but it is very important to know if you have an existing team, to kind of know where are they at, like what do they perceive our brand, our practice, our joint effort here? How do they perceive this? Because right, that's part of the three I guess, groups of people. There's you and your team, there's your patients who are already your customers, and then you have the community at large. So just as important as your opinion about what you guys do is their opinion. And chances are there's more of them than there are of you. So their opinion may even be more important than yours. So yes, Dr. J, it's very, very important to sit down with them and talk about that.
And that really ties down to core values because, you know, when we have our coaching and consulting clients and we talk to them about just having their vision statement, their mission statement, their value statements clarified and working with the team to identify, you know, are they actually aligning with the core values that they're talking about in this exercise? It's really important because if there's dissonance there, if they're stating their core values as one thing, but they're acting a different way, there's incongruence. So whether you're talking about, you know, your vision, mission, and values, and you tie that to the branding piece, it's really important those things are clearly aligned. Yes?
Yeah, I always think back of what, you know, when someone says, oh, that's not something that he would do, right? When talking about anything in general, that's how you want to feel about everyone in your practice. The something they would do is the brand, right? You want someone who is perfectly aligned so that if you're busy one day and your practice is going nuts and one of your staff members has to step up, you don't have to wonder how are they going to do it? What are they going to say to the patient? Do they know my processes and protocols front to back? No, because they believe in what you believe in. So at the end of the day, let's say patient care is your number one area of focus. It's the number one identifier of your brand, the service, the experience that the patients get. And your practice is super busy and a patient comes in, how is your staff going to interact with them? What options are they going to provide for that person? So on and so forth. So you really want to make sure that the people you work with and the people who represent you, really, because a lot of times your staff spends a lot of time with your patients, that they're perfectly aligned with the vision that you have for why you exist, why your practice exists.
Awesome, thank you. We had a question coming about this being taped. This is taped. Everybody will get the recording. And yes, you can share it with your business partner. That's totally fine. Please feel free to share it with anybody that you think can benefit from this. We're really doing this for the profession. So feel free to share. You'll have the link and share away. Okay, last thing I wanted to share really quickly was just, I'm gonna just pull up my screen again. I'm gonna share. So if you go to the kaizenovate.com website, you can see all the information that we talked about related to the first part of the webinar today, the personal well-being, all the links and resources associated with personal well-being that we shared with you, your personnel policy. It's currently being uploaded. It may not be exactly live right now, but within probably an hour, you'll be able to have that link. So you'll have the policy available to you. Again, more links as it relates to connecting with your patients through telehealth, WebEx, and other services that provide connection through digital means like Zingit, Sked, and ReviewWave. The template also to connect with your providers will also be made available. That'll probably be ready in about an hour. And then other practices, other resources that are available for your practice, specifically as it relates to federal and state program examples of what else is out there to help you. And I just want to give a shout out to my friends at Chiro Health USA. Some of you may be customers, many of you may be customers actually. Ray Foxworth, Christy, they're amazing people. They're doing great work. They've come out with some awesome webinars. So whether it's Choose to Defense or Chiro Armor or Chiro Health USA, those are all great resources that, that they're providing for the chiropractic profession. We've linked their resources to our page as well. They have webinars coming up. I know there's one coming up around the SBA loan requirements and how to apply. Check them out, guys. Use the resources that these good folks are putting out for you in order to ensure your success getting through these challenging times. Lastly, I'm going to share my t-shirt with you. This is actually our brand, Talk About Branding. When we rebranded, we talked about rethinking everything that we were doing, rebuilding our organization in a way that was consistent with the brand that we knew our future was, and then lastly, restarting. And I think a lot of us are going to go through that process, you know, throughout the next several weeks, even a couple of months, where we're going to rethink how we're running our practices, how we engage with our teams, how we engage with our patients. We're going to restart our practices in a way that are going to make our practices more successful than ever before, and especially with the content that Lucas is sharing with you. I mean, do the homework because the homework matters. And lastly, You know, we're going to restart this whole thing in a way that is going to put chiropractic at the forefront for improving population health. And that's our mission, and that's why we exist. So I want to thank you guys for being with us today. And we will see you again on April 17th, right, Lucas?
21st, I believe.
Oh, sorry, April 21st. Somebody's got to keep me in line. We'll see you on April 21st. If you guys need anything, just feel free to reach out to me, okay? All right, y'all. Love you. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.